100. Senator DeBar, I recognize you to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill or Senate Bill 2700 is a bill that came to me at the request of my County Veteran Service Officer. And what it does, if you look on line 142, it basically allows a full homestead exemption for unremarried surviving spouses of members of the armed forces who were killed or died on active duty, as well as the surviving spouse of a member of the Guard or Reserve who was killed on active duty. Basically, it allows for an exemption in all ad valorem taxes on the assessed value of homestead property. And it gives them on line 199, a little bit extra time to file for the exemption. I think extra 30 days. I don't think it'll be a lot of cost or expense to the state because there are so few of these that we understand. For those that are concerned about being close to populations around Keesler or Columbus Air Force bases, majority of those are going to stay there for 3 years in PCS or change duty stations, and they're living, so it won't affect, those spouses as well. So as far as the cost, I don't have an exact number. It just depends on the number of surviving spouses that do remain. So that's an explanation. I'll be up for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, are there any questions for Senator DeBar? Seeing none, Senator Simmons' motion title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Bill will be reported out. Next bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 2335. Senator Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2335 deals with the child care tax credit. This is from work over the summer. I know Senator Boyd put a whole lot of time and effort into this. It's something we were looking at a little bit last year as well, but currently we provide a 50% income tax credit to employers if they provide child care on site at their workplace. This has not been utilized, has not been taken advantage of. And essentially what this would mean, an employer would have to build a child care facility to get this credit. And we have not seen that that's happening. So what this does in this legislation, it gives another opportunity to do a similar thing. So this credit would provide a credit to an employer for any direct payment to a licensed or registered child care entity on behalf of an employee to provide dependent care during working hours. The credit would be limited to $3,000 per year per participating employee and would require that the entity that's being paid would have to be a registered child care facility, EIN and other things that make it accountable. So the way to think about this would be, if you as an employer decided to hire someone, and my thought on this would be someone, perhaps a new mother who is faced with a situation where they're unable to go into the workforce because the cost of daycare is so great that it prevents them from entering into the workforce. This would allow the employer to pay for the daycare expense for the employee. And as a result of that, if that employee paid over $6,000 in a year, the employer would get a $3,000 tax credit for paying that. So the expense would be great to the employer to do this, but the advantage would be greater to the employee to get them participating in the workforce. I know Senator Blunt had kind of a similar kind of concept on one bill that we brought up on the floor regarding TANF dollars. I think it's another way where we can look to try to get, some of the working, a lot of times mothers, into the workforce and give them an advantage to move forward with this. But I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Senator Simmons for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have one question. My question is for the taxpayer employee, in your example, the mother, the money that the employer pays would not be considered or filed as income, would it?
No. So the employer would pay this amount to the daycare. And we wanted to make sure in this that it was a registered entity, because we certainly didn't want to have a situation where maybe family member was taking care of the children and, and there wasn't really a need, if mother or grandmother, can take care of the child. This is for someone who doesn't have anybody who can take care of the child and gives them the advantage of their employer paying for that childcare. Now, would $6,000 a year pay for the full expenses for a child in daycare? I don't think so, but it would be a step in that direction.
Thank you.
Senator, any other questions on the bill? Seeing none, Senator, for motion.
My motion would be title sufficient do pass.
Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda is Senate Bill 3101. Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 3101 would allow for a business to have an option to expense 100% of certain expenses, research and development, experimental expenditures, qualified property, and qualified improvement property as defined by the Internal Revenue Service Code. They would be able to expense 100% of those in the first year instead of the scheduled depreciation. The IRS has been allowing for this, and they will be phasing it out. This would keep it permanent for Mississippi, which does not change the overall revenue to the state over the period of the depreciation schedule, but it could spur economic growth by causing people to want to invest money before the end of the year for tax benefit in that particular year. And that's an explanation of the bill.
All right. Are there any questions on the bill? Senator Horn for a question.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is more or less an accelerated depreciation.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, and with that accelerated depreciation, how many years does that cover?
It varies based on the items. So different items have different schedules per IRS code.
And-
I think all of these, I believe, and I'll double check this for you, I believe all of these would be in a 20-year or fewer schedule, with most of them being maybe a 5 or 7 year.
And do you have a list of some of the qualified improvements that are eligible?
I'll get you one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Horn. Any other questions on the bill? Senator Blunt for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Johnson, what is new in section 2?
Yeah, there's nothing new. It's just brought forward.
Thank you. Any other questions on the bill? Seeing none for a motion.
Title sufficient do pass.
Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Last is Senate Bill 3102. Sparks, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll have an amendment at the proper time. It's just the striking of one word on line 55. It should have been included. Would you like me to take that up first or explain the bill
Go ahead and
first?
explain the bill. We'll
Okay.
take care of that.
This bill addresses something we did last year that allowed a taxable entity to pay their taxes at the entity level and not the taxpayer. For instance, if a law firm or a trucking company or a farm is owned through an LLC or a sub-S corporation, that they could actually pay their taxes at that entity level and get a corresponding credit. This has been recognized by the U.S. tax code to also be a situation where you can expense, and that's not part of the SALT cap deduction at the federal level. So it'd be beneficial to our in-state businesses who paid at the entity level, and that's an explanation of the bill. The only amendment I would make is on line 55, the word gross would be stricken. There's no such thing really as a gross income tax liability. You either have a liability or you don't. So I will just strike that word if that's would be my amendment.
All right. You've heard the amendment. Are there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Any other questions on the bill? Seeing none for a motion.
Title sufficient do pass committee sub.
Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. That bill will be reported out. Motion to rise and report. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.